Today, I want to give you 4 of the 50 ways to inspire and reignite yourself when life keeps dragging you down. We came up with the title for our book because it was something that I screamed at the microwave all the time. This is not what I ordered. This is not the life I ordered. That came about during a time, my children were 5 and 10 at the time. My husband was 42 years old. He had been healthy all of his life. Out of nowhere, he was struck with a life-threatening lung disease that's incredibly rare. His diagnosis was that most people survived for 5 years. I remember when they were telling me that, I was at the top of the UCSF Medical Center in downtown San Francisco looking out at the Golden Gate Bridge, never expecting that overnight my life would be turned upside down. As I was gazing at that Golden Gate Bridge, I kept thinking, how could I just run away from all of this? And my cell phone rang. It was my daughter's kindergarten teacher asking me if I could pick her up because she and 32 of her kindergarten kids had head lice. That's what we call trying to balance it all. As I moved forward, it was my kitchen table group made up of my friends who coached me through it, as they themselves were going through some very scary times. But I can tell you that what helped me is you get a choice of how you're going to go through something. Is it a gut-wrenching mess where you hide out and it breaks you? Or do you look at it as an optimistic opportunity? And the difference is your mindset. We have a lot of science now that talks to us about our mindset and how it affects our day-to-day lives. I decided that no matter what, I was going through this with an optimistic, hopeful attitude because I didn't want my children to suffer from this. It was difficult, and I tried to trick myself into it. The first thing that I did was someone had told me the science behind gratitude, that you had to find something every day that was wonderful about your life. I would sit at night after the children were put to bed, my husband was asleep, I would sit in my favorite chair and stare out the window, forcing myself to think of the great things in my life, and I would write it in a journal. My first few entries were pitiful. I wrote, "I'm very glad the puppy did not pee on the carpet." Amazingly, I kept it up. I forced myself. And there was something that happened that I cannot explain. It truly affected my outlook on life. It affected my interactions with people. Even my husband's doctors saw a difference in me. So I understand the science, I understand the faith, but that works. So ladies, grab yourself a journal. And that's one of the tools that you can use to reinvent and reignite your spark. And even if it's the puppy didn't pee on the carpet, it's a good start. The next thing in reinvention is we all need a dream catcher. We need someone to believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves. I was lucky. I had one of those people. She was a blue-haired lady. At the age of 18, I saw her in action. Her blue hair came from, she had beautiful silver hair, and every Friday she got a cut and a comb out and a tint of blue. Do you remember those women? She marched me into a bank. She didn't have a credit card in her name because during those times, women weren't allowed to have credit cards. She held nothing in her name, not even her own house. She maybe had $50 in a savings account, but I knew Mr. Banker Man, who was sitting in his opulent office across from her, didn't stand a chance. She was there to get a loan. That loan was for me to send me to college. We walked out of that bank, and my grandmother had gotten a loan for me, and I attended Indiana University as the first female in my family to get a college education. My grandmother believed in opportunities and possibilities. The way she led her life was with incredible optimism. I remember her visiting me once in San Francisco, and she got off the plane and told me how wonderful the food was. There was nothing that she could not find a silver lining in. The important thing for me is during my worst times, she reminded me of what I could be. She reminded me of potential inside of myself when I couldn't find it there. She reminded me what a wonderful place the world was. And each and every one of you ladies has a blue-haired lady somewhere in their lives. It may be your mother, your grandmother, your sister, your mentor, your colleague at work. It's that one person that you go to remind you of how to reinvent your life and what's worthwhile about yourself. The third lesson is in reinvention, I've often discovered that success comes disguised as a dumb idea. I was a guest lecturer at Stanford University for many years. I also judged the Stanford Business Plan competition. I mentored some of those bright young men and women who were inventing these companies in their dorms. I have seen the craziest business plans written on the backs of napkins being funded by venture capitalists that I didn't think stood a chance. Voila! In many cases, they are household names, and they were industries that came out of nowhere. And what I began to believe is you never know where the next great idea is going to come from. It comes from the strangest places. I also had the opportunity many years ago to interview Anita Roddick, who started The Body Shop, and she just passed away a few years ago. One of the things, and we write about it in the book, is the whole reason she invented The Body Shop is her husband decided to ride a horse around the world. This is a true story. I never could figure out how he was going to cross the ocean. She was sitting there with two children that were 2 and 3 years old, and she had to find a way to support herself. So she turned to what she knew best, which was the mixtures of body oils and essence. And from her home, created The Body Shop. A dumb idea. Nancy Olson, who was a part of our original kitchen table group in the early days, took her pension from her kindergarten teacher's 401k, decided to start a line of faux jewelry, which ended up being one of the largest franchises in America called Imposters Jewelry. Dumb idea when you look at it from a strictly business perspective, but it was for her love of beautiful jewelry that she could never afford. And she thought every common woman in America had the same dream as she. And she was right. I have another example. This was a young man who was in the dorm who had the craziest business plan I had ever seen, with very little funding, while he was living in the dormitory, and all he could tell me was, I come to America, I intend to be successful. By his junior year, he had invented a software program that I still cannot tell you how it works, but it's powering all of the BlackBerries that you have in your pockets. I think he's now on his third startup. He was named the Young Inventor of the Year by MIT. Crazy, crazy, dumb ideas. But that's sort of how success comes. It comes from this love, this heartfelt interest, and this ability to go for it. In closing, I wanted to talk with you about the final thing that helped me with reinvention and reigniting my spark. I have this bracelet on. I want to show you. I didn't wear my gaudy version because this is the Midwest and I was told to tone it down. This says attitude, courage, and goals. It was given to me by a professional basketball player several years ago. And there's a story on how he used it with youth. I saw the effect that it had on youth to remember to set goals, have the right attitude, and the courage to make it happen. Well, what I did is I thought, I know about the attitude, I certainly have the goals, but this courage thing is really hanging me up because I'm really a scaredy cat. And I was facing some really scary issues in my life with my husband's illness. So I went to Macy's and I bought these diamond letters that went on a leather strap, and it just simply read courage. And I wore this bracelet for 2 years. What it did for me was it was a touch point. And when I was afraid of the risk I was going to take, or the information that I was getting, or something that scared me about the change that I was undergoing, I would simply look down at my wrist and see courage. And it reminded me of every woman who had gone before me, who had survived, who had thrived, and I knew in that moment that I could do it.